Hey everybody, thank you. Thank you for joining us for the everything you need to know about music, sync, and video game trailers. I'm happy you guys all joined our chat today. So first off, I'll introduce myself. My name is David Epstein. I am the director of licensing over at Warner Chappell Production Music. I handle licensing for all of our video game trailers, theatrical trailers, streaming trailers, and it's thank you to the Nashville Film Festival for having me. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel today. We have Lindsey Kohon from GNET, big video game trailer agency that we work with all the time. She's the head of music over at GNET. Naaman Snell, who is the owner and chief music supervisor of Space Cowboy Music. Naaman's been he has the coolest background right now too, and we go way back. He's one of the first people music supervisors I ever worked with when I started licensing music for video game trailers. And Naaman has done all sorts of work on theatrical trailers, video game trailers. So thank you, Naaman. Thank you, Lindsey. And then last but not least, Rob Bennett, who is a very experienced composer. He started off working for Hans Zimmer, and he has done hundreds and hundreds of trailers for theatrical video games, and he currently runs Glory Oath and Blood trailer music library. And he lives in Nashville. Lindsey and Naaman are in Los Angeles. I'm in Los Angeles, and yeah, we're just excited to have you guys on the panel. So yeah, so the first thing, and this is weird because I see you guys, so I know there's a big audience out there, but this is the first time I've worn a collared shirt since like February. So I feel very fancy today. But anyway, so I thought we'd start off and just kind of go around the panel, and if you could just introduce yourselves as far as give people just a quick brief description about your roles at your companies, and a brief background on your experience and what led you to music supervision, what led you to be a composer. And I think people would find that interesting, how you ended up where you were, and maybe just give a brief description of your day-to-day and what you do in your job. So Lindsey, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I've been at GNET agency for about 11 years now. I started as a supervising producer, and then as we got more projects, I started to kind of pull my own music because we didn't have a music supervision team. It was each producer for themselves. So I started to pull. I've always been into music, and it just kind of came naturally to me. And then I started pulling for other producers and projects I wasn't working on. And I guess about 6 years ago, I stopped producing and just took over head of music for GNET as we grew our company. And we are always busy. We are always needing music. And so that just kind of stuck with me, and that became my passion. And I started making contacts, and everyone in our industry, we're so lucky, is so nice, and they're willing to teach you the process and work with you, because you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And I made a lot of mistakes, but you kind of just learn as you go. And I'm lucky enough to know Naaman as well. And Naaman has been a big influence and mentor to me. I was just on a call with him before this about something else, and like we talk multiple times a day. So it's really always good, if you're interested in getting into this, is to know someone in this, someone to look up to, someone to give you some support to bounce stuff off of, because you're going to get things back that are confusing, and there's a lot of legal jargon, and it's always good to know people. So that said, so basically on a day-to-day, what I do is I'll get briefed by my team. So let's say we're working on a Call of Duty trailer. let's say it's one that just came out, like the Cold War. So that kind of it's sort of taking place around in the 80s. So that's where we're trying to target our music searches to the 80s. Now, client will throw a curveball and say, well, 80s music doesn't really work with Call of Duty and the vibe. And so then you have to go in and figure out, well, what 80s tracks can we trailerize? Is there something there? So there's a lot of creative that I do on a day-to-day basis. I'm mostly focused on creative pulling for our projects, and I'm in charge of making all the demos and remixes, reaching out to composers, keeping relationships, and that kind of stuff. But it's a very fun process, and you get to, we just what just came out, another Zombies trailer for Call of Duty came out. We used a remix of Tainted Love that we made, which is really fun. And it's like songs that you never thought you could use for Call of Duty, like Tainted Love, like you were able to use it. And it's kind of makes you feel good when something sticks, because editing is so important, but also I think equally as important is the music that is being used. The music like really tells the story. The music changes the vibe, sets the tone, brings the attention in. And I think music is the heart of the projects that we work on. And people don't realize that all the time, because everybody's so visual, but music is so important to our industry, and it's everything. If we lose a track because of licensing, it can kill a whole trailer, because that song made the trailer. Sorry, I kind of went a little all over the place, but that's basically what I do on a day-to-day basis, and a little bit of information on what I've learned over the years of doing music supervision and kind of just working in this industry.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. And there's a lot of things that you mentioned there that we'll go back to, that I think people would like to dig into a little more, but thank you. That was great. Also, for anybody watching, if you have questions for the panelists, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll try to get to your questions at the end, in the last 15 minutes or so. And then also we have some really cool work from our panel that I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and you'll get to check it out. We'll do that towards the end as well. So thank you, Lindsey. Naaman, why don't you fill us in on your role and how you got started, and anything else you'd like to add about your day-to-day.
Oh man, cool. Yeah, hi everybody, Naaman Snell. Thanks for having me on here. Let's see. Space Cowboy Music. I started my supervision company about 3 years ago. Sorry. Started about 3 years ago, independently, working across all media areas: film, TV, theatrical trailers, streaming, promo, video game marketing, all of it. But before that, I was working exclusively in film trailers. Before that, I had a small stint in advertising, got my start in TV and film with Liza Richardson and Russell Zeker over at Lionsgate Studios. So been doing this for a little over a decade now. So I've kind of been all over the place, lots of great experiences. And for me, it's just fun to work across all media areas, which is one of the reasons that I started Space Cowboy, is just for the opportunity to work across different medias, have different challenges. While music supervision is a similar job across all those medias, they all have their own individual, quirks and challenges. So, and I love all of it, different music needs for each one. So yeah, I don't like to do the same thing for too long. But yeah, as far as my day-to-day, that being said, being an independent music supervisor and business owner, day to day, we just see what comes in, who contacts us, what projects we wind up getting involved in, and then we just kind of take it from there. I just wrapped an indie film that premiered yesterday and over the next few days at the Newport Beach Film Festival, which they're doing virtually, as everything is today. But then, like Lindsey said, she and I were on the phone about our most recent situation we're trying to work through for a project. So again, just all over the place, loving the different challenges. And yeah, I think that's a quick rundown, and I'm sure we'll dig into a bunch of other stuff on this panel.
Definitely. You forgot also, Naaman's also an awesome DJ if you live in LA. You used to be able to go see him on Melrose at the Village Idiot, spinning during brunch. Checked it out if you get, always a good time. And also the, yeah, no, I think that's cool. And it's awesome to see you've gone off on your own and involved in so many different projects. And I also know you're a big gamer as well. What's your favorite game right now?
Oh man, I've been down the nostalgia hole. They just re-released Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 in glorious 4K. So I'm getting awesome. a lot of childhood feels on that one, which has been a lot of fun. But I mean, Destiny 2 right now is the game that I've been playing since the beginning of Destiny 1, and I can't put that stupid game down. I love it so much, to the
awesome,
much to the chagrin of my loving wife.
Lindsey, are you playing any games? Are you a gamer?
I do play games. I am playing Tony Hawk 2 because we just finished that campaign, and so Naaman and I.
Perks of the job, free games.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not hard to work at GNET because you kind of get all the games, which is so fun. Destiny 2 also is a big one, and I like to play like a lot of like small indie games as well. They help like calm me down during this time of a pandemic, so all that kind of stuff, like definitely. But there's also, my boyfriend's like really into Call of Duty, so that's like nonstop in the house.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm a big Madden and NBA 2K, big sports gamer, so always a lot of fun. And before we get to Rob, I thought I'd share this. I thought this was really interesting info just about the gaming business in 2020. So there's an estimated 2.7 billion gamers worldwide that will spend 159.3 billion on games in 2020. And they are estimating the market will surpass 200 billion in revenue in sales by 2023. So it just shows just how big the gaming industry continues to grow. Some other interesting facts: there are more than 214 million people in the U.S. today that play video games 1 hour or more per week. 75% of Americans have at least one gamer in their household. And the average age of a gamer, 35 to 44. A lot of older people, even over 65 and older, are playing. And the other statistic I saw was that 64% of US adults and 70% of those under 18 regularly play video games. So it's just the industry is booming, and I think that's great for everyone who is working in it, for the music industry. It's and obviously the emerging esports market that's getting huge, and so it's an exciting area to be in. So okay, next we'll go to Rob. Now Rob is he's on the creative music side as a composer. And Rob, why don't you tell everybody about your experience doing video game trailers and video game music in general, and also your role with Glory Oath and Blood, which is our partner at Warner in at Warner Chappell in trailer music.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and it's fun to be here at the festival virtually. Yeah, so currently I'm a composer and also a co-owner and creator director of a trailer music label, Glory Oath and Blood. We kind of specialize in creating music for trailers, but I got my start I grew up studying music, went through a whole lot of college for it, and then moved to LA and got a job as part of Hans Zimmer's crew in the very early 2000s, in fact, just around 2000, I believe. And so that's really where I really got my feet very wet, muddy, and just as dirty as possible in the industry on films like Gladiator and Black Hawk Down. And then from there, I just kind of spread out in all directions, trying to get work wherever I could in Los Angeles, scoring whatever I get my hands on, whether it was television, advertising. I did some video games, especially earlier on the Spider-Man franchise and Matrix franchise, Path of Neo, way back. Same thing, television series for Mike Judge, I scored one for ABC. But throughout all of this, I've kind of always been doing trailer music, and I got into trailer music probably 2002, so way back when there was only really 3 companies that were actually like servicing the trailer industry to create original music for them. And so during that time when there was so little competition in this kind of world of music needed for trailers, scored hundreds of trailers in the early 2000s and mid 2000s. And along the way, I ended up co-owning this property with Warner Chappell, which now really takes up the majority of my time. And it's a fantastic genre to work on. The community is amazing. The community is really pretty small and is really supportive. I can say that working at Zimmer Studio, I found the film industry to be really kind of cutthroat and competitive among composers and stuff. Whereas in the trailer music industry, I find a much stronger community of support among people and encouragement, which is such a, it's such a valuable thing to have, to kind of be able to talk things over with your peers and be able to kind of support each other and celebrate each other's successes and kind of cry out your failures to one another. So I've just, I couldn't be happier doing what I do. We also are fortunate to be partnered with Warner Chappell, and that invest in our catalog, and it allows us, my background is in orchestral music. So we are at places like Abbey Road every year, recording with big orchestras and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars working with the same kind of, basically the same crews that are scoring the video games, that they're investing in the scores and in-game music that's in many of their games. We are producing our content at the exact same peak of production level and quality as what they're spending internally within their game. And so we've kind of really tried to stake our mark on quality.
Awesome. And so, Rob, when you, coming from a composer standpoint and specific to video game trailers, when you are about to produce an album of trailer music or compose music for a trailer, do you have a specific direction that you're going for? If, let's say, the music supervisor isn't giving you a specific direction and you're making a library album of trailer music, is there what's your creative process like in creating music that you think will be good for video game trailers specifically?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's very unique to trailers, and it's for those that may be composers or aspiring composers and people looking to get into music in the trailer music industry out there. It does have a very specific. It is kind of a specific discipline and subgenre of music, really, because ultimately, unlike it differs from, for example, video game score or in-game score, in that the medium itself, trailers have a very specific function. They have a specific kind of format, and often there's even kind of a general form that many trailers kind of fall into and follow. And so if you design your music basically to support that function, format, and form as much as possible, then your music is going to be much more appealing to an editor who's trying to build something. Basically, you guys are working towards the same end, right? So as we creating any kind of piece of trailer music, basically, obviously the first thing, the key element above all else, obviously, is just having great music. Obviously, the great song. Ultimately, if your song is not amazing, it's not going to get used. So, but setting that aside, after that, there are lots of qualities and components to a song that will make your music more appealing to an editor, and the supervisor will see that immediately and can recognize that as a piece that they can really work with. So that all boils down, those qualities boil down to basically to synchronization, what we're all here talking about. It's this element of sync between music and video that really creates all the magic of what we're kind of here discussing, right? And you have your video, which is one thing, you have your audio, the other thing, and where they intersect, the space where they intersect and synchronize is where you create this thing bigger than either of the parts. And that really, it doesn't exist. If you, as Lindsey was saying, it really doesn't exist. If you pull out the song, the whole thing collapses, and vice versa, right? So they create something that's more meaningful than either one of the separate parts.
Right.
And how do you create that synchronization in your music? What are we doing? What is it that you do to create or to make your song syncable? It really it comes down to creating moments in your music. That's how we approach it. Trying to create musical moments and the more musical moments you can create in your song, the more moments an editor can use those to synchronize to their cut. And then they can cut around those moments and play off those moments. If your music has dynamics to it, they can throw dialogue into dropouts. And so this interplay of basically an editor's cut, your rhythms, your musical moments that you've created and built into your song, the ability to synchronize those, the deeper and deeper that synchronization can become, the more and more magic I feel like you create, the more they marry to one another, right? The more the picture, the visual, and the music marry to one another. So our attempt is always to basically create as many syncable moments and musical moments in a song. Also to structurally build music where you give editors the ability to get out of a song or into a song in a certain way. So making moments where the songs drop down. Obviously, many trailers aren't just one piece of music, as we may people talk more about, but often trailers have several pieces of music in them, and it can be very challenging for get in and out of a song if there's no space where the songs breathe. So,
Rob, I'm going to jump.
Yeah, keeping that in mind as far as like leaving spaces for making your song easy to get into, to get out of. Those are all kind of things we're thinking about. Basically, it all boils down to synchronization.
Thank you. And you guys do an awesome job at it. And I encourage everyone to go look up Glory and Blood because they make some amazing trailer music. A lot of the music's on Spotify too. You can go check it out there if you just want to stream it and check it out. So I wanted to get to some questions that I think a lot of people are interested in. And one of the big ones, and I know this is for Lindsey and Naaman, and I know you guys sign NDAs, and I don't know how much you can share of this, but whatever you can share, I think people would appreciate, is regarding budgets, music budgets for video game trailers. I'm assuming you can't give a specific number maybe, but just in general, is there a range? Do you see a general range for when you start a project and the video game publisher says you have X amount to make this trailer, or are they just kind of like go for it and then we'll take it from there? And so how does the process work as far as the budget's concerned with the music that gets used in the trailer that includes the commercial tracks, the production music, if you have to hire a composer? I think a lot of people would be interested how that works as far as your budgets go for your trailers.
I'll go first and then Naaman can go after. But so really for video games specifically, it's all over the place. For bigger games, they usually have bigger budgets, but it depends on the specific asset. So like maybe a launch trailer may have a bigger budget than additional map that comes out after the game's released. But what I'm finding more and more is that when there is a song that hits, even if it's over their budget, they'll go for it. And it could be a library track. It doesn't matter. It's like Rob was saying, it's that magical blend. And if we pitch something really expensive, sometimes they buy it and we're like, where'd that come from? But yeah. It's really comes down to creative. I mean, sometimes it's just right away. They're like, we don't want to spend more than X amount, and you're like, okay, gotta stay library music. But I think also right now there's a lot of smaller artists that on different labels that want their music exposed, and people are willing to cut you deals. And Naaman's the king of making a deal, and he's the one who makes it happen for me all the time. So you just never know. Bid budgets are all over the place, but again, it really comes down to creative. But the library music that is out right now and the composers that are making it are at the same level as mainstream music. So sometimes you get most of the time you get an instrumental from library that sounds 1,000 times better than any mainstream instrumental that you get. There's just so much more that goes into it, and you can do so much more with like stems. I mean, we've licensed Rob's music a lot, and particularly for the video game we work on called Gears of War, and being able to have access to his stems helps us, like he said, be able to work, be able to get in and out of things. And sometimes using library music actually makes the edit better because we have more flexibility with it. Like we could actually go back to Rob and say, hey, could you tweak this a little bit, or could we do something? So there's a lot of more creative you can do with the library track actually than with mainstream music, because you're kind of locked into that song. And we need, especially, sorry, I'll let you answer a sec. Especially with video games, we usually start off with like, it kind of coasts, then it starts to build, and then you get really high, and then you need a climax, and then you come down. So I always say it's a roller coaster. We need a track that goes like this, and then that big at the end. And most mainstream music doesn't have that. That's why you're trailerizing a lot of mainstream tracks. But that's why we license a lot of mainstream, but we prefer to work with library because there's just more flexibility there.
Gotcha. Okay, that's awesome. That's super, super interesting. Great info there. And Naaman, what about, do you have anything to add to that, just as far as when you jump into a project, as far as like you being aware of the budget or your restrictions to that, or no restrictions? And then also, I'm curious about the influence the publisher has with are they just leaving it to you as the creatives, just like give us something we like, or are they involved a lot in approving all the music and making sure they're happy with it?
Yeah. Lindsey covered it all pretty well. I mean, just to start with just to start with the budget part of it, like as a music supervisor, that's as I'm getting creative direction on a project, that is always the first question out of my mouth is, how much do you have and what are the rights that you need? Like, one directly influences the other based against what you want and what you need for the project. I mean, I've worked on projects where, we have upwards of 6 figures to potentially throw at something. And those are obviously like the behemoths, as far as gaming goes. But then,
right.
Then it also just depends on the asset. Those exact same properties will then turn around and be like, okay, we spent most of our budget that we were planning on, like, the first big piece out, the second big piece out. Now we're doing like the smaller reveals of different, nitty gritty things here and there. We're not going to spend as much money. So we need to stay, in the, we need to stay in like the tens of thousands of dollar range, like 10, 20, or under. Like I've had some stuff come back where they're like, cool, we used this massive song, but now we need to find something to replace it with for like 2K.
Right.
Those are all super exciting.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people deal with that in all aspects of trailers or syncing music completely. But I guess people have the perception always like, oh, video games have so much money. It's like there's no budget limitations. A lot of times people feel that way. But, obviously there are.
It all depends on what the actual asset need is.
Yeah.
So that will directly affect the budget.
So now I have to ask the most cliche question ever, because I feel like it's just something people always ask, is what, obviously in video game trailers, I think if you've watched enough, you've seen the trends are, you do see a lot of covers and you see a lot of remixes. So besides that, do you see any other trends happening in video game trailers specifically? Lindsey, do you want to?
Yeah, the trend that I've seen over like, I guess the past 5 years would just be like heavy sound design. Most of the trailers are packed with sound design and sound effects. So it's like a lot of gun cocking and different engine revving and things like that, and a lot of stop down. So there's a lot of that out there. I guess maybe I'm more in tune with that because that's stuff that we use a lot. So we kind of like to have our trailers be heavy sound effect based. So that's like, I think that's the biggest one. But like you were saying, the biggest trend I see is just everything being trailerized, like everything, like Beethoven, like anything, like
Right.
opera now. I mean, it's like literally runs the gamut. I think
And
last
do you
year.
want to, for people out there who don't really, that are on the panel, that are viewing this and don't know exactly what that means, trailerized, can you explain to everybody what that is?
So trailerized to me, I don't know if there's like a real definition of it, but for me, it means that like you're taking any kind of mainstream track and you're making it work for your trailer. So you're augmenting it, which means taking the stems or taking a vocal or an instrumental and changing it, going back to, usually we go back to a composer and not the original, like, let's say we used a David Bowie track. We're not going back to whoever recorded that, not David Bowie, but his group. We don't go back to that. So we go to a composer who takes what, either a stem or vocal, and adds instrumentation to it so we can cut that trailer. Like I said, with the roller coaster in it. So we have a stop down, we have this and that. And because normally a song just coasts along like you hear on the radio, it doesn't have those big hit moments like we need in a trailer, which you need like a first act, second act, a third act. So we're able to go in and kind of make it work for what we need it to. Sometimes that means augmenting the vocals and or whatnot. So it's that's kind of what trailerization means to me. It's usually makes, in a nutshell, the back end is usually massive.
Yeah.
So that's what we kind of do, is like just pump that back end up.
Can never be big enough.
Right.
No, exactly.
I want to make sure, I know we're on limited time, and I want to make sure that people viewing get their questions answered. So I'm going to get to some questions that I think covers a lot. And then also I want to show some of your work at the end. So one question we have from the audience is, Naaman, we'll give this one to you. Thoughts on being pitched trailer remixes with uncleared vocals or acapellas? How often do you guys license existing songs for composing for a game?
It's a good question. As far as taking uncleared remixes and stuff like that, I will always listen to anything, very, very rarely, unless I'm getting something directly from the label, are remixes ultimately pre-cleared. Like the label will have them, like if they've been pre-cleared. That's always obviously easier because there's nothing I really have to worry about as far as that, quote unquote sample goes. Obviously, with anything that's an uncleared sample, the first issue is you have to make sure that it, one, is clearable. So that has to be, outside of like, can I work this for the budget at all? Then it's, where's the sample from? Like, is this already clear? Does the label know about this? And I deal with stuff like that all the time, where the label's not aware, and they get feisty right off the bat because they're just like, what is this? Where is this coming from? We have to work a deal, all this kind of stuff. So it just opens this whole can of worms. So I would always say, if at all possible, try to get, if it's a master sample, get the label involved, start talking to them, because most of the time they will want to do some type of a buyout because it's their sample. They own it. They have the rights to it. And
Naaman, you're cutting out there a little bit, I think.
a lot of cases, tell you if you want your track. Am I frozen here?
Yeah, you cut out a little bit, but I think thank you. We got the gist of it from the first. You just cut out the last little 30 seconds there. And Lindsey, so I have one for you. This is from the audience, and then Rob, I have one for you. Lindsey, do you commission, or this is for the music supervisors, do you ever commission artists or producers to create covers of known tracks so that you have control over the arch elements of the song? Example, a female vocalist covering Pearl Jam. And what does that process look like?
Yeah, that's basically like my everyday.
Okay.
That's like everything I do. I mean, Naaman and I do that just on the regular. It's like, I think that's almost more normal than trailerizing now, where it's like, can we just take like, I'm just going to keep using David Bowie. Can we just take a cover of like, take the gasoline and just put a eerie female vocal on it? I mean, it's all about the juxtaposition, I think, still. And that process, I usually reach out. I have like a core group of like 10 kind of composers and companies that I work with that make that kind of stuff for me. And it's a pretty easy process at this point. We just present the creative and what we want to do, and we just work with them and kind of hear them out. And sometimes they'll give us multiple versions. I always love connecting to new people that do that stuff. There's never enough people that can make that kind of
And
stuff. So
what would your advice be? What would your advice be to, whether it's from artists, managers, music companies, just music publishing companies, labels, anything, how they approach you to pitch an artist for to be used in a video game trailer, whether it's a existing song or to do custom work and do a cover? And I'm sure you get hit up all the time. So what do you think the best way to contact you, that you'll actually listen to the music?
Yeah, email me.
Okay.
If you
well, you're a lot nicer than a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I mean, just like Naaman, like I get a ton of emails. I have like a download pile that I need to organize all the time. But if it may not get back to you right away, but if you send me an email, I will download it and I will listen to it. And if I like it, I will 100% reach out. And I appreciate everybody's time. I always want to make sure people listen to me and read my emails. So if you find me on LinkedIn, I don't know if they're sharing my information here, but hit me up, send me your stuff. Like, I'll listen to it. Like, I love hearing new stuff, and maybe it's something that like we put in there and no one expected it and it blows up. Like, that's so cool. I would love that. So yeah, like send away.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, thank you, because I think people feel like, oh, it's impossible to get my music in a trailer, or it's impossible, but I think that's a really cool thing if you're taking the time to listen to everyone's music. And Naaman, how about you? When people send you music, what's the best way for you to listen for consideration for a trailer?
Don't send me streaming links. I have no use for those.
Okay.
If I can't immediately download it and get it into my queue of stuff that I need to listen to, I'm not going to remember to go back to a random email to listen to a streaming link. Like right. Unfortunately, that's just I'm just me. That's just the way that I have to operate, is to just like get things.
So you would prefer an attached MP3 or a Dropbox link, or
a Dropbox link, disco link, box link, whatever, just something that I can very clearly see and click, and it goes down into my downloads folder, and I can like sort it into what I need to listen to. And that being said, make sure everything is very clearly labeled, whether that's the folder that you send me. Definitely make sure it has metadata. Like, if I put that thing into my iTunes because I really liked, just to stick with the Bowie theme, if I really liked your Bowie remix or Bowie cover, and I go to pitch it to Lindsey, and I like go into the info and there's nothing there, I'm like, I have no idea where this has come from. And chances are I'm not going to be able to then find that random email, where that came from. So
right.
Label.
Okay. That's good. Sounds simple enough. Lindsey has to go in a minute because she's busy. She has big projects going on, licensing music, but we were super happy to have the time we do. And before you go, I just wanted to show your trailer real quick, just a minute of it. And if you could just give a quick explanation of the process. This is the trailer for, this is for Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to share my screen without messing this up. Okay. And then we'll just show a minute of it real quick.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
paralyzed.
You're here because you're the best special forces NATO has to offer.
We're all that keeps the world from turning to cinders, comrades.
We work off the books.
Operate in the shadows.
To keep the wolves at bay.
Today, we reshape the world.
What the fuck are we doing in Miami?
Let them come.
Okay, so that was awesome. Awesome trailer. You guys all heard Biggie in there. You heard the sample, Duran Duran, right?
Yeah.
Sample.
Yeah.
And yeah, so real quick before you have to go, why don't you tell us real quick about how you got that music cleared, what made you pick that music, and just kind of a brief description of how that one came about.
Sure. We had like 4 other covers that we had made with 4 other libraries. So we kind of sent a different brief out to each person. And we tried a bunch of different tracks and we liked them all, actually. This one, I think just that notorious Duran Duran track is so iconic. And the fact that Duran Duran's in that was released in the 1980s, and that Biggie sampled it, it just made it like a little out of the box, because we were just going to use the Duran Duran and trailerize that. But then, after some digging, I was like, why don't we use it? So that is really cool. That was actually a combination idea with our creative director, John Fleming. We didn't really think it was going to get approved. We didn't think it was going to actually be shown to client. That was the one that was like so far out that we were like, never gonna work. And then it came together. We used Pitch Hammer on that one. And they went in and did some trailerization of the Biggie track. We originally were gonna use Duran Duran, the Duran Duran song itself, and the Biggie song, which used a sample, but it turned out to be too costly and too complicated with syncing. So we ended up just using the Biggie track that used the Duran Duran sample, which is the portion we wanted to use anyways, that iconic dun dun dun, notorious. And then we just went in and trailerized it in the back end, because if you just listen to that Biggie song and try to cut it into our trailer, it would have fallen flat without the trailerization that Pitch Hammer did. This was the first time.
So Pitch Hammer did the drums.
Pitch Hammer did all the augmentation to it. So I think there's a lot of other stuff in there other than drums, but that's most primarily probably what
we have a compliment from the audience about the drums in that trailer. But yeah, just awesome. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that one. And I know Lindsey has to go. So if anyone's interested in connecting with Lindsey, you can contact me. I'll give you my email at the end, and I'll give you her email, because she just volunteered that she will answer all your emails.
Can't wait to hear from all of you.
Yeah. Thanks, Lindsey.
All right. Bye, guys. Thank you so much. Hopefully I can know how to leave this.
Yeah.
Bye.
And so while we have Rob, we have one for you. And gosh, I mean, we could talk about this for hours, but I know we're limited time and we want to get to everyone's questions. So Rob, a question for you is, can you explain the difference between format and form?
Okay, yeah, well, I guess by form I meant structure, and by format I meant the kind of length of a trailer and what it's kind of intending to do, right? So a trailer is basically a little short film where we're trying to get people excited about a story someone has put, piece of art someone has put together, and you're trying to get them out there to go and either buy and take part in the video game, or get them to the theater, or to watch the show. So by format, I simply mean that a trailer is a format of short movie, and by form I'm saying the structure that exists, basically the arc of drama within that format, right? And so, as Lindsey was saying earlier, often trailers are kind of broken down into a 3-act structure. You've got an introduction, medium paced middle where you're getting through story or backstory, and then this big finish, this kind of all important climax session, kind of the iconic part of what everyone thinks of as a trailer, where everything's just over the top and an endless build to the final title card.
Gotcha. Rob, I got another one for you that's sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. We're just limited time, so want to get these all in. This is about sound design. Do you do you have advice on perfecting your sound design and balance your track? I have a lot of dynamics bunched together sometimes, learning how to make it breathe. How do I recognize which points in the song I should make rest? Anything on that quick?
Well, yeah. Well, I would say that as far as building sound, so right, trailers use a lot of, like, obviously the classic sound design are kinds of like hits and impacts and slams and rises and things like that. That's what we think of when we think of trailer sound design. But those things can be easily overused and make a song start to sound cheap. And so I often try to think of how can I make a musical moment in a song where those elements exist under the surface, and that they're there to support, and they're there in the stems. So when an editor comes to dissect a set of stems for a song, they can use those elements if they need to push them up. But my attempt is to always try to make musical moments in a song rather than just purely sound design moments.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I think that's super helpful for anybody who composes music, for whether it's a trailer music or any sort of orchestral music, in doing sound design. And as Lindsey mentioned, sound design is such an important part now of always has been, but especially even more than ever in video game trailers. Naaman, I have one for you. Can you advise? Do you have any go-to music libraries, and do you use both exclusive and non-exclusive libraries?
How are exclusive versus non-exclusive libraries like?
I'm assuming something around that. You're licensing. Are you ever asked to license something exclusively, where it has to be removed from a library, maybe, or?
Exclusivity.
Yeah, exclusive. Yes, exactly. But I would just say, how about just to start with, what are your go-to libraries for video game trailers?
I mean, honestly, it really does depend on the project. I mean, but just from off the top of my head, I'll go to Audio Machine for certain things, Position Music for certain things, you guys for certain things.
Glory, Oath, and Blood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You guys are great. Kill it. Keep sending me music.
We will.
Ahead of other people. So yeah,
there's another tip there. Anyone send pre-releases to music supervisors, because they appreciate that.
Yes, it's the music supervision game is like any leg up we can get for our client versus somebody else. Like, we'll always take it. Like every supervisor operates that way. It's back to what Rob said earlier. Like, the trailer industry is a lot friendlier. Like, we all hang out, we all talk, all that kind of stuff, but we still like to get the goods early.
Right. And to clarify, the exclusive library comment earlier, or question, I think what they meant was, should the artist be signed or composer exclusively with one library versus having their music with multiple libraries? Does that make a difference to you? Like,
I don't care where I get it, as long as I get it. Like, as long as it works, I don't care who I got it from. It just you could be completely independent, or it could be one of my tried and trues that I work with. I just want, it just has to be good and exciting and as easy to
download as possible.
As easy to download and clear with as few hiccups as possible.
Let's no, absolutely. I think that anybody who is on this side of it, when pitching, you just want to make, you want to make music delivery and clearance as easy as possible for the creatives on the other side. So I thought right now, Naaman, we'd show your spot. and give us a brief description of what went into this one. This is the game. This is for Deathloop. This is the official gameplay trailer. And so let's check this one out.
You want out of a time loop? You gotta learn how it works. Black Reef is a puzzle, and each visionary is a different piece. Here's Igor.
I am a respected scientist.
I've done so many loops, I've learned to run circles around him.
Hey, over here! I'm coming for you! Get him! What the hell?
I'm gonna get you guys a link actually to the trailer so you guys can all check it out. You guys viewing, and we'll share it through the chat. But while I do that, Naaman, why don't you tell us about the trailer and what music you used and what the process was like?
So this was my second trailer with this project. In the first trailer we did, which obviously you can find online as well, we did a custom cover of a little more obscure animals track. So for this one, obviously it's very like when you see the trailer, there's a lot of Saul Bass, like late 50s, early 60s style, like stylization to it with the graphics and the animation and stuff like that. So they really wanted to lean into that. So this, first of all, this piece wound up being a start to finish custom score, working with a composer producer. He did weaved in a bunch of different styles, and because the trailer is like 3.5 minutes long, it's a little more long form piece than a typical 2.5 minute piece. It was a lot of work. There was a lot of back and forth with the composer, and he was an absolute pro and like just super down for it, because it was a cool project. Everybody was excited to work on it, but I think it wound up being like a 3-month process. Like it was,
wow.
It was a long haul one. It's been a while since I've been on one that was that custom and that long.
Well, I encourage you guys all to check it out. We sent the link through the chat, so you'll be able to see it. And I'm sorry that the screen share is not loading properly. It's not connecting, but yeah, that was a really cool spot. And in general, how many when you're assigned a trailer, how many assets are involved? How many different spots are you cutting for one campaign, let's say?
A lot of times it's kind of one at a time. I mean, they'll like back up to each other pretty quick, or maybe overlap just a little bit depending on what the release schedule is. So we started working on this one. This was one where we actually started working on it after we already had the other trailer, the first gameplay trailer with the animals use pretty well locked up. But yeah, I mean, short answer, that all really kind of depends on release schedule. Right.
Okay, cool. And did they, like, when you go into a project for music supervising a video game trailer, do you watch the footage first? Like, do you have what kind of goes on for you creatively to think, oh, this would be a cool song for this, or this composer would be good for this, or is it just kind of like a gut feeling you get about it, or are you getting direction from the publisher saying this is kind of what we're looking for?
Yeah, it's a lot of collaboration with the client, with the game, the game publisher, game designer, whoever my client might be on the project. Because obviously it's their property. They want to have like a cohesive tone and all this kind of stuff. So I have to take that into account first and foremost. And then it gets into you know, do you guys want to use an existing song? How recognizable do you want it to be? Do we want to trailerize it? Do we want to cover it and like make it our own? Do we want to do custom score? Like it all gets talked about in those creative briefings. And then once we have a little bit more of a direction, that's when I kind of really go to work with like pulling the music, talking to the composers, whatever might happen. Like on this particular one, because it was such a unique ask and it kind of morphed over the course of the project, like I had to go out to a couple different composers and do like spec work, and everybody kind of like present like, we're trying it this way, we're trying it this way, we're trying it this way. And then when the client like heard what they liked, they're like, this isn't it, but we like what they're doing, let's work with them and keep things moving. So yeah, that's kind of how that one works.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I like the aspect of it, that it's in a lot of ways a collaboration. And because I hear a lot of times in theatrical, there's, you know, a lot of good work gets into it, and then it gets to like the head marketing guy who's just or woman who's like, no, we're done with this, or we just don't like it, just out of like, if it's a song they don't know, or I've heard all sorts of stories like that still
happens in video games.
Yeah. I'm sure it does, but I guess I guess with any of those, any of these situations, it just depends on the company you're working with and the people you're working with. We have I wanted to share also, Rob, a song that from Glory Oath and Blood off an album called Endorphins 2, which was used in a Gears Tactics trailer that actually GNET cut and Lindsey cut, but we're having issues with the share screen. So I'm going to send it. I sent the link through the chat. So hopefully you guys can all check it out. And this is one of Rob's pieces of music. So do you have anything to add about this, Rob? Yeah. This was Tricky New Kids was the track. It's a orchestral trailer music track.
Yeah, I wanted to play this one because I think it's a really good example it really illustrates, number one, the form I spoke about earlier with basically a 3-act structure, and the sync possibilities of creating these moments in your song. And so from what I remember in the song, in the video, you've got about 27 seconds of intro. And so you'll hear that's a portion of the song before any like drums or beat actually kicks in. So you really are lacking a lot of pacing at that point, and you have the setup area. And then around 30 seconds, you'll feel a beat kick in, the story changes place. There was this remembrance of where we came from for the first 30 seconds. At that point, here's where we are. That runs for like a minute, and you'll feel a beat kick in, and basically a backstory comes on. You introduce new characters, and also you'll notice that through there's like a cool dropout section where a kick drum pattern comes in and starts ramping up to a new section. They start cutting through all kinds of on-screen footage with the kick drum pattern. So I think it's a really cool example to show all the little detail work you can get into with synchronization, really timing all kinds of little musical moments into.
And if anybody, we are, unfortunately we're out of time, but if anybody is interested in hearing any Glory and Blood music or seeing any of these trailers or connecting with Naaman, connecting with me, connecting with Rob, I'll put my email in the chat. And I'm sorry if we didn't get to all your questions. This is a really interesting topic we could talk about for hours and hours, but feel free to email me and any of us, and we'd be happy to answer your questions. But thank you all for joining us.